Great win for the Jets versus the Broncos, and this is their first win since week 1 where Aaron Rodgers went down. Coming off a tough game versus the Chiefs where you really saw Zach Wilson step up and come into his own just as a leader on the team, where he's not going to be the vocal guy in the locker room, but you could really tell that he cared with this loss. And then the backstory to this game is Sean Payton gets to the Broncos and he's like, everything they did last year, we're doing everything differently. And then it's like, wow, Sean, you're talking some smack in this game. He's being vocal. And then Russell Wilson, what's going to happen with him? So we're expecting fireworks with Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers versus Sean Payton in this game in Denver. And we're like, okay, the Jets are probably going to get the win in this game, but the Broncos, they're going to be competitive. They're competing for a playoff spot. All they need is some adjustments, and then Sean Payton will be able to bring Russ back into form and get them into the playoffs. Well, we knew the Broncos weren't going to the playoffs this year. We knew that wouldn't be the case. But then you talk all of the smack about Nathaniel Hackett, and then you lose to him with not Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, after saying we're doing everything differently, when Nathaniel Hackett is pretty much running the offense because he's the OC. The head coach is a defensive guy. So it's not like the head coach is having too much of an imprint. So now you're in even worse shape than you were with Nathaniel Hackett, even though you have Sean Payton. And then in this game, the turnovers were bizarre. Like, there were so many turnovers in this game. It was like, it seemed like every other play there was a turnover, whether it was on a punt return, an interception, a fumble, and then the other team would just give it right back. And the Jets were the ones that were able to capitalize because they have this guy named Breece Hall. And now that he is completely unlocked, he destroyed the Broncos, which was supposed to be pretty good defense coming into this year. Well, they forgot everything that they knew last year. They took the blue pill, went back into the matrix, forgetting everything they thought they knew. They dropped the red pill. They are no more. They forgot how to play defense in this game. And then while Zach Wilson didn't have a great game, you still saw some stints and drives where you saw Zach Wilson be able to move the ball down the field, where Zach Wilson's kind of bizarre, where he just has these random, like, really good drives where he's able to march the ball down the field, stay consistent. And then Breece Hall being an absolute weapon. They're actually figuring out how to get Garrett Wilson the ball. So I think the Jets will be competitive. I still don't think they have enough to make the playoffs, but you win out there and beat the Broncos, who your only win now is versus the Chicago Bears. It's like, maybe it looks better this week because of what they did versus the Commanders on Thursday Night Football, but you should have lost that game if Matt Eberflus wasn't if he knew how to call plays, or he knew when not to go for it and just kick a field goal, and they ran the worst possible play and the Broncos ended up winning that. But this is a team that could very easily be 0-5. And then how do you talk all of the smack about Nathaniel Hackett and then lose to him at home? This is a team that hasn't won a home game yet this year. You're 0-3 so far at home. How are you gonna, and then you can't move on from Russ. And I get Russ has been better than he was last year. He's not turning the ball over as much. He had until this game, and then he had a better touchdown to interception coming into this game. It was at 9-2. So like, Russell Wilson is better, I guess. And then Samaje Perine got loose a few times in this game, but you still only scored 21 points, which is 1 point more than you scored versus the Dolphins. And then you lost at home versus Zach Wilson and the Jets, who everyone buried until they saw him come alive versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And then we're like, this game, Zach's going to cook. Nathaniel Hackett's going to get his revenge. And then Aaron Rodgers is going to tweet about it. And all of those things happened.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, like we mentioned, Sean Payton, with all the smoke that he talked, going out there and losing to Nathaniel Hackett, embarrassing. Now, Sean Payton, I don't know if there's an opt-out clause for like mid-season where he can just walk away and go back to Colin Cowherd's, analyst panel, but he should strongly consider if he can, because this Broncos start has been pathetic. You mentioned the Bears win. I don't care that you beat the Bears. It's the way you beat the Bears. Still not impressive to me. So you haven't had a single game this year where I'm impressed. Now, as far as Russell Wilson, 11-2 touchdown interception ratio, he has looked better. No doubt about it. The problem is that he's still limited as a quarterback to this point, where, the numbers might deceive you. When you look at the game, their offense is still fairly limited, especially when you have to rely on Jalen McLaughlin, who did have a decent game this game, but they're pretty limited as far as their offense is concerned. You have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, who didn't get utilized until the end of the game. It's like it's awesome that you guys can put up 21 points now at ease for the most part, but the problem is that your team is giving up 37 points a game, where you have on pace to be one of the worst defenses in NFL history. Vance Joseph. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't think he's ever been, the worst sort of defensive coordinator, but what is going on? This is pathetic at this point. This is a team that had one of the best defenses last year, and now you're on pace to have one of the worst defenses in NFL history. 70 points against the Dolphins, and then this game against the Jets. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, no, it is embarrassing. And the problem is, Mr. Unlimited is limited. However, the money you're paying him, you pretty much wrote him a bottomless check when you traded for him and said, what do you want? And now you still can't get out of it. Can they get out of it soon? Or
No.
is it still like 3 more years of this?
They can't get out of it until 2026.
Okay.
Or they'll have, I think, $70 million in dead cap.
Yeah, so they have to beg him to retire. But at the same time, if you're Sean Payton, you walked into the worst. You walked into a situation you thought could be good, and then you're like, I'm going to do everything different this year. But it's almost like Sean Payton almost get burned by his ego. And he deserves everything that's happening this year, where the fact that he thought he could fix Russ to be an elite quarterback again, where he struggled to be an elite quarterback the last 2 years in Seattle, and he struggled to be a good quarterback his first year in Denver, and now he's just like, we're passing him because he's playing as solid as Case Keenum did with the Vikings. Like that's pretty comparable to his play with the Broncos, is someone like Case Keenum or someone like Kirk Cousins, where it's like, yeah, Kirk Cousins is better than Russ at this point, and you want him to be comparable to someone like that, but at the same time, you wrote him a bottomless check, and then he's not going to be able to live up to it any of the years. But Russ is like, I'm getting paid, so he's like, dee.
Yeah,
not my problem. I already won my Super Bowl. I don't mind just taking $230 million or $212 million, however much they paid him, to just chill out the rest of my career in Denver. Like supposedly supposed to take the next step, and you can't do that with Sean Payton. So can't imagine it's going to build in Denver. It would take probably another year or 2 to rebuild this team. So you're not going to be elite next year. So maybe by year 3 you can compete.
Maybe, but by that point, you're going to be paying Russ like $60 million annually.
Yeah, because you didn't think you'd have to rebuild the defense, but now you have to overhaul your defense and rebuild your offense. And now Jerry Jeudy wants out. You just traded Randy Gregory. So now you're going to have to start trading away some pieces just to make up for Russell Wilson's contract. So it is a mess in Denver, to the level of they're like a little bit better than the Patriots, but it's getting close to that level where you're now with the Giants, Panthers, Bears, Patriots, where you're supposed to be with like, the Rams this year, the Colts this year, like teams like that, not the lowlifes of the NFL. You're supposed to be like maybe like the Falcons or the Saints this year.
I think that they're probably the biggest dumpster fire, to say the least, because you had the team around you where if you put the play of Russell Wilson this year on the top of that defense last year, this team is a formidable team. You mentioned the Rams, you mentioned the Colts. I think that they're maybe like, the Texans to this point have been playing pretty well. The Falcons, right? Like you put that team together and maybe it's a little bit better, but to be this bad and only getting a win against the lowly Bears, this is atrocious to this point.